Hey Rafael, this is Coach Brandon here, and today we'll go ahead and go through some of your lifts using the software here. It'll be really helpful in communicating some of the cues or the things they see in your weekly check-ins. Let's go ahead and start with the bench press video, and we'll go through about 4 of them. To start, we'll look at this guy. Okay, so one big thing that I do notice, you'll notice here that the way that you break at the elbow, it ends up with something I like to call the skull crusher fault. So what I mean by that is if we break at the elbow too soon, it ends up being here on the way down. Now this puts a bunch of unnecessary pressure on our shoulder, and on top of that, it's a really kind of wastes a lot of energy, if you will. So what I want you to do is really focus on, instead of tucking your elbows first like this, let's go ahead and slowly tuck them in the same rhythm that the barbell will actually go down like so. That way everything stays nice and perfectly stacked as we ascend in the hole and produce the most amount of our power possible. Oftentimes we just waste a lot of energy when we do this first, and on top of that, it makes the on the way up portion a little less efficient and harder to keep tension throughout the lift. Really easy thing to fix. Just let's go ahead and do some tempo work on our workups next week and really try to keep that perfectly stacked position throughout the entirety of the eccentric portion. The only other thing I notice is I would love for you to start doing some scapular depression. Scapular depression, real easy. What we're going to do is we're going to go from here to here. That's all it is. We're taking our scapula and we're depressing it. And what that does is it actually helps us to recruit more muscle fibers and protects our shoulder under load. So the second so for example, for me, the first time I learned how to properly depress my scapula a few years ago, I immediately added 20 to 30 pounds to my bench. It's actually pretty miraculous how much it helped. And on top of that, my chest felt so sore the next day I couldn't do hardly anything because most of the muscle fibers that it helps recruit are in the chest. So just a really good way of looking at it. Let's go ahead and just try to scapular depress right before we lift next time. You'll notice that nothing upstream changes when I do that. It's just taking my scapula and depressing it a bit. I'll send you some material on that. That's really the only 2 things I have to note, though: scapular depression and then having a more stacked position on the eccentric portion. So go ahead and look at your deadlift. So the first thing I noticed, obviously I've already looked through all these. First thing I noticed with the sumo, though, you have a really nice hinging pattern. I like the way that you sumo quite a bit. Both your conventional and sumo deadlifts are actually really gorgeous. With the sumo, you'll notice that many people have far better lifts from going from here, here to here. So with your squat and your sumo deadlift, which I'll talk about your squat here in a minute, we have our feet fairly straightforward, and that can be somewhat of a fault at a certain point, especially if you have a certain anatomical build. Some people can get away with that, but at the same time, if you're noticing a lot of strain and pain in your hips, that's probably a good indicator, or your glutes and whatnot. It's probably a good indicator that we need to take those toes, point them a little further out. And what also happens when you do that is you're able to get in a more advantageous position. You can get your hips closer to the load. You can go ahead and try it at any given time. Start with your feet straight forward and then bend down. Try to get your hips as close as you can. You'll notice there's a mile between your hips and the barbell, and then go ahead and point them straight out and try to do it again. Your hips will get far closer and you'll be able to build more tension. And that's really really key component of the deadlift is building tension. So what I want you to do is just fiddle around with that a bit. Go ahead and take them from being straightforward to about a 45-degree angle. That's going to be extremely beneficial for the entire efficiency of the lift and mitigating that pain that you're experiencing. There's only one more thing I have to note, and it's happening at the top. There. So this is actually the best rep. The next rep's a little worse, and it kind of, there you go. So right here, we're kind of in an unhinged hip position. We're not quite shooting through all the way. Ideally, we're standing nice and tall. Right now, we have a little bit of an unhinged position. Not that big of a deal, but that shortened range of motion does add up over time. And on top of that, that top portion is really good for activating the glutes and carrying over to a lot of athletic benefits. So let's go ahead and focus on shooting the hips through and standing really tall at the top. Little thing, easy to fix, but let's just go ahead and go for that. And finally, let's go ahead and look at your squat. Now you have a nice hinging pattern, nice depth. I like a lot of things that I see. The one thing I would have to note is if you look at the cap of the barbell. So the cap of the barbell, this is a perfect example here. We have a directly side angle of your lift. And if you look at the cap, it's going down. And it's probably not even touching your toes if we were to draw a straight line through it. Now, ideally, the cap of the barbell, when we look directly to the side of a lift, is right in the midfoot. When it's right in the midfoot, it actually helps with the best power transfer possible, mitigates injury risk, has you adapting or recruiting more muscle fibers, and does a series of really good things like that. So let's go ahead and work towards that. Now, many people, depending upon builds similar to sumo, can't have their feet straight when they squat. They have to have them pointed out a little bit. Now, I wouldn't say we have to directly go to the 45-degree angle that I'm suggesting in the sumo, but just going from here to about here is going to be a really good idea. You'll be able to sit back a little bit more and be able to use your posterior chain much better. With the cap that far in the front, with the barbell, the load that far in front, it's going to be a very anterior chain dominant movement. And like I said, just not quite as good of a power transfer throughout your body. So let's go ahead and work on that. Easy fix, changing the position a little bit to help the efficiency of it. Now, that's the main things I've noticed with those lifts. With the conventional deadlift, gorgeous, not much to note. Those are really the things that I want us to focus on the most the next week. And yeah, just really dial in the next week or two of training. And I think that's about it.